Welcome back, Tenno. This is a build I've been meaning to revisit for a long time. Nova Prime has always had a strange relationship with damage. Her kit isn't built for raw numbers, but under the right setup, her Null Star becomes a fully scalable damage engine. It takes some work to get there, and that's what this build is about. Nova Prime was actually the first Prime Warframe I fully farmed. She's been my comfort frame ever since. Out of the 1400 hours I've spent playing this game so far, nearly a third of that is with her. She's the one I always come back to, and this build is part of that connection. Nova is a top-tier weapons platform. Any gun can hit absurd numbers with her, especially now that Arcane Hot Shot gives you up to plus 300% crit chance from ability-based heat procs. Her crowd control is unmatched. The value she brings to any squad is clear, and she's one of the most enjoyable frames to run. This version of Nova drops Wormhole completely and runs Nourish in its place. It also stacks two specific augments, Neutron Star and Molecular Fission. Together, they turn Null Star into a high-frequency heat and viral status machine. They trigger Arcane Hot Shot, which boosts your weapon crit chance every time a heat proc lands. When combined with Arcane Avenger and the right stat stack, Null Star goes from utility ability to full-blown primer and crit engine. The rest of the build is focused on keeping that loop going. You'll see ability duration scaling from Shards, status scaling from Nourish, and a damage reduction loop built entirely around particle regeneration. If that sounds like a lot, don't worry. Once you see the rhythm, it clicks fast. Let's break down how it all works. Nova's passive gives her a unique way to generate health and energy orbs depending on how enemies die. If you kill an enemy while they're slowed, there's a 15% chance they'll drop a health orb. If you kill them while they're sped up, it's a 15% chance for an energy orb instead. The slower speed up can come from any source, but in this build, it's mostly from Molecular Prime. Her first ability is Null Star. When activated, Nova creates antimatter particles that orbit her and seek out enemies within 10 meters. Each particle deals blast damage with guaranteed status and gives her 5% damage reduction. With enough duration and strength, you can hit the 90% damage reduction cap. Molecular Fission makes it so that when a primed enemy is killed, either by Null Star or a weapon, they restore 1 or 2 Null Star particles. This keeps your damage reduction up and allows you to keep cycling Neutron Star without running out. Neutron Star is the augment that makes Null Star explode. On recast, all remaining particles are launched out in an 8-meter radius with guaranteed heat status. This is what triggers Arcane Hot Shot. Every time a heat proc lands from that explosion, you gain weapon crit chance. That's the mechanic the rest of the build is built around. Antimatter Drop is the second ability. It creates a floating orb that absorbs incoming damage and then detonates based on what it absorbed, multiplied by up to 8 times. The orb travels slowly and can be directed toward enemies using your reticle. It's strong, but in this build, it's more situational. The main use is to detonate prime targets when you already have status effects stacked up. Wormhole has been replaced with Nourish from Grendel. When cast, Nourish gives you a 45% viral damage bonus on weapons and certain abilities, including Null Star. It also boosts energy pickups by 1.6 times and triggers a small viral explosion when you take shield or health damage. The subsumed version doesn't heal and only applies 1 viral stack on explosion, but the core buffs are what matter for this build. Molecular Prime sends out a wave that primes enemies across a wide radius. applying either a slow or speed up, depending on how you cast. Primed enemies take 100% more damage and explode on death, dealing blast damage in a radius. Molecular Fission uses those explosions to restore Null Star particles, keeping your damage reduction loop running. The blast radius from Molecular Prime also spreads status effects if the kill was from a source carrying those effects. It's also one of the few abilities in the game that can trigger equipped weapon arcanes when it causes a kill explosion. Every ability in this build serves a function. Some prime, some trigger, some refill. And when it's all running together, you get this smooth, constant flow of status explosions, damage reduction refreshes, and crit stacks that make Nova feel fast, tanky, and deadly all at once. Let's go through the full build piece by piece, starting with the Arcanes. Arcane Avenger gives you a 21% chance on damage taken to gain 45% bonus critical chance to all attacks for 12 seconds. This is an additive bonus and applies universally, even to abilities like Null Star. It works consistently when you're under pressure and is a reliable way to bring crit scaling into the kit. Arcane Hot Shot grants 6% weapon critical chance for 10 seconds every time a heat status effect is applied by an ability, stacking up to 50 times for a total of 300%. In this build, the heat procs from Neutron Star are what trigger the Arcane. Every recast sends out heat explosions that guarantee status, keeping Hot Shot active and stacking. This Arcane is the engine behind your crit loop. Without it, the weapon scaling flatlines. With it, you get consistent crit spikes across all your guns. The Aura mod is growing power. When you apply a status effect with a weapon, it gives you 25% bonus ability strength for 6 seconds. That buff helps you hit the 90% damage reduction cap on Null Star and makes your other abilities more effective across the board. It's especially useful for Molecular Prime and Nourish. In the Exilus slot, Cunning Drift gives a small bonus to ability range. That helps the Neutron Star explosion reach more enemies and gives a bit more spread to Molecular Prime. It also makes maneuvering feel slightly smoother with the slide and friction buffs. Now on to the main mod configuration. Primed Continuity gives you 55% more ability duration, which directly increases the number of Null Star particles you can hold and the uptime of Nourish and Molecular Prime. This is what keeps the loop stable. Augur Reach adds 30% ability range and is especially useful for expanding the area of effect on Neutron Star and Molecular Prime's explosion radius. Archon Vitality doubles heat procs from abilities. Since Neutron Star guarantees heat status, this mod ensures you land 2 procs per target per recast, which feeds Arcane Hot Shot faster. It also provides a flat 100% bonus to health. Blind Rage increases ability strength by 99%, but reduces efficiency. That power spike is necessary to hit the damage reduction cap from Null Star and scale your heat damage. Transient Fortitude adds another 55% ability strength and slightly reduces duration, which is still covered by Primed Continuity and the Archon Shards. Neutron Star is the augment that gives Null Star a second function. When you recast it, the remaining particles explode in an 8-meter radius, applying guaranteed heat procs to enemies in range. This doesn't just clear space, it fuels Arcane Hot Shot. Every hit status from that blast adds to your weapon's critical chance. That's what makes Neutron Star essential here. It turns your damage reduction ability into a full-on crit engine. Molecular Fission is the augment for Molecular Prime. It allows enemies killed while primed to refill Null Star particles. It also makes the particles themselves apply the Prime status. This keeps the damage reduction loop going and ties directly into the rest of the build. Umbral Intensify gives 44% ability strength and fits well with the strength scaling already present in the build. Every mod and arcane here has a clear role. The strength mods let Null Star reach its damage reduction cap. Duration keeps the buffs running. The augments create the loop. And Arcane Hot Shot, backed by consistent heat procs and Avenger uptime, drives your crits into overdrive. Now let's go over the Archon Shards that tie the whole setup together. This build uses 5 dual-forged Archon Shards. The first one is an Ember Shard with plus 37.5% casting speed. That boost helps you recast Null Star and Molecular Prime more quickly, especially when you're trying to land heat procs from Neutron Star or refresh priming waves for particle regeneration and explosion chaining. The second is a Violet Shard with the Equilibrium bonus selected. It gives you 30% energy from health pickups and 30% health from energy pickups. That synergizes well with Nourish's energy multiplier and keeps you topped up during constant ability cycling. The last 3 are Crimson Shards, each giving plus 15% ability duration. That's a total of 45%, which stacks with primed continuity to help keep Null Star particle count high and extend the uptime of Nourish and Molecular Prime. Duration also keeps Arcane Hot Shot's uptime stable since you won't need to recast as often. And that's what makes this version of Nova feel so consistent in actual missions. Before we move to the weapons build section of this video, here's how I actually play this Nova build in mission. When I start any mission with this Nova build, I open with Null Star. This gives me instant damage reduction, capping at 90% if I keep my particle count up. Every time I recast Null Star with Neutron Star equipped, I get heat procs across nearby enemies. That's what feeds Arcane Hot Shot and spikes my weapon critical chance. Every recast means more crit right out of the gate. After Null Star, I cast Nourish. This sets up my viral damage bonus on all weapons and abilities, including Null Star itself. It also increases my energy sustain and covers my team with the same buffs. Once I have both my DR and viral bonus rolling, I move straight to Molecular Prime. That primes every enemy in range, doubles the damage they take, and sets up the chain reaction. Enemies explode on death, and those explosions, with Molecular Fission equipped, restore Null Star particles. That keeps my damage reduction loop running and lets me keep stacking Arcane Hot Shot almost non-stop. I rarely need to cast Antimatter Drop, but I'll use it when Nautilus pulls a cluster of enemies together with Cordon. It's especially good for finishing off tight groups, or for mission types like Void Cascade or Void Flood, where I want fast clears or need to detonate status effects in a small area. That's the gameplay loop. Open with Null Star for DR and crit. Buff with Nourish for viral and energy. Cast Molecular Prime to set up the whole field. Only bring out Antimatter Drop when the situation calls for it. Everything is about keeping your buffs up, keeping Arcane Hot Shot stacked, and mowing down whatever the game throws at you. Let's talk about the primary weapon I'm using in this build, Boar Prime. This thing used to be just a decent crit status shotgun, but once I slapped the Incarnon on it and tailored the perks to fit my build, it turned into a reliable short-range monster. Now let's get into the evolutions I selected. For Evolution 2, I picked Rhyphied Bane. It gives me a flat plus 10 damage, and if I reload from empty, I get another plus 10. That bonus stays unless I manually reload with bullets left. So the loop is simple, always reload from empty. Evolution 3 is Ready Retaliation. This gives me plus 100% reload speed, but only after the first reload from empty. It kicks in on the second and every reload after that, so it makes the loop even faster. Evolution 4, I went with Critical Parallel. That's plus 20% crit chance and plus 0.5x crit multiplier. Both directly help scale the damage output of the Incarnon beams, especially once crit mods are added. For the Arcane, I'm using Shotgun Vendetta. On a kill within 5 meters, I get plus 180% multi-shot and plus 75% reload speed for 15 seconds. This pairs nicely with Rhyfied Bane and Ready Retaliation since it fits the reload loop while stacking multi-shot on beam attacks. Right after the Arcane, I added Galvanized Acceleration into the Exilus slot. It boosts projectile speed and beam length by 30% and gives another 30% on kill, stacking twice. Since Incarnon beams cap out at 20 meters, this helps push their reach further so you don't feel locked into melee range. Now let's break down the mods exactly the way I've slotted them in. First up is Primed Ravage. This gives me plus 110% critical damage and is my core crit scaling mod. It directly benefits the Incarnon beam form, especially since I'm running the Critical Parallel perk for extra crit chance and multiplier. Then I have Galvanized Hell. It starts with plus 110% multi-shot and builds stacks of plus 30% multi-shot on kill up to 4 times. That means I can get up to plus 120% more multi-shot during combat, making the beams fire more rounds per trigger pull and hit more enemies per burst. Contagious Spread is in for plus 90% toxin damage. This is the first half of my viral setup. Shotgun Elementalist gives plus 90% status damage and plus 60% magazine capacity. The status damage here is multiplicative, so my heat and viral procs hit harder. The extra mag size helps me take advantage of multi-shot output without reloading too often. Primed Point Blank adds plus 165% base damage. Nothing fancy here, just raw upfront damage that affects every shot. Primed Chilling Grasp brings in plus 165% cold damage, and that's the second half of my viral combo when paired with Contagious Spread. Scattering Inferno adds plus 60% heat and plus 60% status chance. This mod helps stack heat status for the weapon's own DOT output and contributes to building up overall status layers. Lastly, Critical Deceleration gives plus 200% critical chance and cuts fire rate by 20%. That fire rate penalty doesn't affect the Incarnon beam form, so I just get the full crit bonus without a real drawback. Altogether, this build makes Boar Prime feel like a proper primary weapon instead of just a backup tool. It melts enemies inside 20 meters and stacks heat and viral damage effectively. It adds consistent elemental pressure and delivers solid damage output to the overall kit. When Null Star spreads heat with Neutron Star, Arcane Hot Shot is triggered by ability-based procs, and the weapon capitalizes on the boosted crit window that follows. Let's talk about my secondary weapon, Laetum. This is one of the strongest and most synergistic sidearms you can bring into any endgame content, and in this particular build, it plays a critical role in amplifying Nova's overall damage output. Let's start with the evolutions I selected for my Laetum. For Evolution 2, I went with Rapid Wrath. It gives me a straight 20% fire rate, and it applies to both the Untransformed and Incarnon modes. It's a no-frills perk, but that extra fire rate really helps the Laetum stack up status effects faster, while also letting me rip through targets with less downtime. Evolution 3 is Lethal Rearmament. On headshot, I gain 30% reload speed for 12 seconds, and that stacks up to 3 times. This affects both forms, including mode switching to and from the Incarnon state. The stack decay mechanic is easy to manage in practice. With multi-shot helping me land more headshots, I can maintain 90% reload speed most of the time. That keeps the Incarnon uptime smooth and efficient. For Evolution 4, I picked Elemental Excess. This one adds 20% status chance and subtracts 10% critical chance. The status boost stacks nicely with my mod setup. And since this Laetum is built for devouring attrition anyway, the loss in crit chance is negligible. Evolution 5 is Devouring Attrition. This is the real power spike. It gives a 50% chance to deal 2000% extra damage on non-critical hits. It works in both fire modes and multiplies with base damage mods like Hornet Strike. What makes this perk even more valuable is how it synergizes with Nova's Molecular Prime. When primed enemies are killed, the explosions they cause can inherit traits from the weapon that dealt the final blow. That includes Devouring Attrition, letting the explosion itself deal massive damage if the condition is met. This interaction means Molecular Prime explosions themselves can trigger Devouring Attrition, creating chain reactions that hit way harder than expected. That's why this perk is not just good, it's essential for making the Laetum a true powerhouse in this Nova setup. Now let's talk about the Arcane I'm using. I went with Secondary Fortifier. This Arcane lets me generate Overguard by dealing damage, at a rate of 1 point of Overguard per 100 damage dealt to an enemy's Overguard. It also gives me times 8 damage against Overguard, which is especially helpful when dealing with Eximus units and other shielded targets. More importantly, when a hit proc originates from a weapon equipped with this Arcane, any subsequent hit damage over time from other sources inherits the Overguard steal effect. That synergy is a big deal for this Nova build. In the Exilus slot, I'm running Steady Hands. It reduces weapon recoil by 60%, which keeps the Incarnon form much easier to handle. This mod is about quality of life. It doesn't affect accuracy directly, but it tames the weapon's visual recoil pattern and helps me stay on target, especially during heavy status spread. Let's break down the mods one by one. Galvanized Diffusion gives 110% base multi-shot and builds up to 120% more over time. Each kill grants 30% multi-shot for 20 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. That gives my Laetum a 230% multi-shot potential, making every shot fan out with more projectiles, more procs, and more chances to trigger Devouring Attrition. Pistol Pestilence adds 60% Toxin and 60% status chance. This sets up my viral pairing and helps the Laetum hit its status cap more reliably. More status procs mean more consistent damage over time and better synergy with Elemental Excess. Hornet Strike gives 220% base damage. It's the foundation that multiplies with Devouring Attrition. All the raw power from that perk gets funneled through Hornet Strike's scaling. Lethal Torrent adds another 60% multi-shot and 60% fire rate. This mod stacks beautifully with Galvanized Diffusion and Rapid Wrath, bringing the fire rate to a very responsive level while stacking even more projectiles per trigger pull. Augur Pact gives me 90% additional base damage. It stacks additively with Hornet Strike and rounds out the damage floor of the weapon. Magnetic Might gives me 60% magnetic and 40% critical damage. The magnetic is not the core focus here, but the crit damage is a nice backup boost when crits do land. Since the weapon is not built for crit scaling, it's just a supplementary effect that rounds out burst potential. Primed Convulsion adds 165% electricity. This, combined with the heat from another mod, completes the magnetic elemental pairing. It also supports the general damage formula with a huge chunk of raw elemental value. Primed Heated Charge is the core heat mod. It adds 165% heat damage and is critical to applying heat procs that interact with Nova's Arcane Hot Shot. That synergy is non-negotiable for the way this whole setup operates. With this configuration, the Laetum functions as a high-frequency status and burst tool. It lines up directly with Nova's ability base, heat procs, and heat inherit setup, benefiting both from Arcane Hot Shot's crit window and secondary fortifier's overguard utility. This weapon also ties in beautifully with Nova's Molecular Prime, where explosion kills can inherit devouring attrition's massive damage spike on non-crit hits. That synergy makes the Laetum not just a sidearm, but a core contributor to Nova's ability loop. It fills the gaps left by the primary weapon and becomes a damage centerpiece in its own right. Let's talk about the melee weapon I'm using in this build. Dual Ichor. This weapon was always fast, always crit heavy, and the Incarnon setup pushes it even further. The synergy with Nova's status spam kit is obvious. Now let's get into the evolutions I selected. For Evolution 2, I went with Ronin's Rush. That's a flat plus 90 damage, plus after the final hit of your neutral combo, you get a 30% attack speed boost for 33 seconds. It's simple. Swing hard, swing fast, and keep the tempo high. For Evolution 3, I chose Swift Break. It doubles your heavy attack wind-up speed, so when a Tennokai or Incarnon heavy attack is available, you can trigger it immediately. No waiting on wind-up. Your big hits connect fast every time the opportunity is up. Evolution 4 is all about consistency. I took Absolute Valor for the plus 34% status chance. That single perk pushes your status stacking to where you want it. Reliable, repeatable, and always fueling the procs that make this build tick. Onto the Arcane. I'm running Melee Influence. Every time you land an electricity proc with your melee, you get a 20% chance to spread all your elemental status effects to every enemy in a 20-meter radius. That means your viral, heat, toxin, and electric procs chain out and infect the whole crowd. In practice, this turns every group pull into a status explosion. The result is simple. Your status effects spread, enemies melt faster, and every group pull becomes a lot less dangerous. Stand slot is Swirling Tiger. The wide sweeping multi-hit combos let you hit more enemies per swing and take full advantage of your status spreading mods and arcane. Plus, the built-in status bonuses on certain moves are a hidden power boost. For the Exilus slot, I slotted in Discipline's Merit. With this, Tennokai heavy attack opportunities happen every 4 melee hits, no randomness. You always know when you can drop a big heavy, keeping your Incarnon uptime and burst damage under control. No more gambling on procs. Now for the mods, exactly how I have them. First up is Primed Pressure Point. It's the core damage mod, plus 165% melee damage, simple as that. Primed Reach comes next. It gives you plus 3 range, which you need on a weapon with short reach like Dual Ichor. You feel the difference in every swing, hitting targets you'd normally miss and letting those status procs jump further. Berserker Fury is a must. On every kill, you get plus 35% attack speed for 10 seconds. stacking up to twice. It keeps your attack speed maxed out even as you rip through enemies. Weeping Wounds is the mod that fixes your status chance. You get plus 40% status chance per combo multiplier. Dual Ichor's base status is low, but with this and a high combo, you reach that 100% status sweet spot fast. Primed Fever Strike loads the weapon with plus 165% toxin, giving you hard-hitting viral combos when paired with your other elemental mods. Volcanic Edge gives you plus 60% heat and plus 60% status chance. The heat adds to your status layering, helping you stack more elemental effects on every swing. The added status chance keeps your spread reliable. Voltic Strike adds another plus 60% electricity and plus 60% status chance. You need the electricity for melee influence and the bonus status to keep the spread consistent. Lastly, Galvanize Elementalist. Plus 80% status damage baseline. Plus every melee kill gives you plus 30% status chance for 20 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. That's up to plus 120% more status chance on top, turning every hit into a guaranteed proc machine. Altogether, this build turns Dual Ichor into the perfect primer and finisher for Nova's kit. You're spreading viral, heat, toxin, and electric across crowds, stacking status for faster kills, and chaining Tennokai and Incarnon form uptime. Now, let's talk about the companion I'm using in this build. Nautilus Prime with Verglas Prime. This is a pure utility setup that prioritizes grouping, status spread, and keeping itself alive in high-pressure content. Here's a quick breakdown as you see the build on screen. Starting with Nautilus Prime itself. I'm running Cordon as the main precept. Every 15 seconds, it pulls enemies in a 30-meter range toward a point just in front of me. There's no line of sight needed, it doesn't alert enemies. And it clusters targets for easier AoE and status application. It's as brainless and effective as companion crowd control gets. For status spreading, I'm using Contagious Bond. Whenever the Nautilus kills an enemy with a status effect, it spreads half of those procs to enemies within 9 meters. Momentous Bond adds extra elemental types after Eximus kills, which stacks for more damage types on its attacks. Manifold Bond makes every precept, like Cordon, apply all the status effects modded on the weapon. Kill an enemy with 3 or more unique status effects, and your precept cooldowns drop by 3 seconds. Duplex Bond clones the Nautilus every 100 energy spent, up to 3 clones at a time, each one pulling aggro and generating energy orbs on kill. Reinforced Bond gives me a flat 60% fire rate buff if Nautilus has over 1200 shields. Calculated Redirection makes that easy by boosting its shields by 250%. Primed Regan means even if it dies, it's coming back fast with 10 seconds of invulnerability. Assault Mode makes sure the Sentinel actually shoots, and Vacuum pulls in all the drops in a 13.5 meter radius. Now, onto the weapon. Verglas Prime. The main thing here is high base cold damage, great crit, fast fire rate, and very high status chance. I am building for viral and heat status, with maxed multi-shot and damage to take advantage of all that. Galvanized Chamber is here for huge multi-shot scaling. Serration and Primed Cryo rounds pump up the base and cold damage. Rime rounds, Malignant Force, and Hellfire add more status types, viral and heat. Rifle Aptitude gives another 90% status chance. Shivering Contagion spreads every cold proc to enemies within 6 meters. The result is that you're constantly freezing, infecting, and burning anything near the Nautilus, stacking viral and heat, So every status effect in your main build gets amplified. Everything here is tuned for synergy and support. You get clustering for area of effect, spread as many status procs as possible, and always keep the companion up and running. That's the Nova Prime build, plain and simple. Molecular Prime boosts your damage by 100%. Null Star with Neutron Star strips armor by 50% through heat procs. Grouping tools like Nautilus with Cordon help you chain, blast procs, and build crit chance fast with Arcane Hot Shot. This build is niche. If enemies are spread out, chaining drops off, but when it lines up, the damage spikes hard. Nourish gives you viral bonus and energy sustain. Everything is built for status, crit, and quick clears. Boar Prime, Laetum, and Dual Ichor all fill a clear purpose. Every weapon and mod is there for synergy, not just stat padding. The companion setup with Verglas Prime is there for grouping, status spread, and steady utility to keep the whole build running. Let me know what you think. If you have any tweaks or run a different setup, drop it in the comments. If this build works for you, share your results. We get better together. If you want more builds like this, subscribe to the channel. I'm still building this out, and every sub helps. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay efficient, stay creative, and keep pushing your builds. See you on the next one, Tenno.